I'm going to call this interview African Waves, African Waves, African Radio Waves. I'm Nigel A. James, and my guest is Inou from the Cameroon. Very good morning, Inou. Welcome to Talk 49.
Thank you so much, Nigel, for the invitation being here with you.
Inou, we're going to talk a bit about radio in the Cameroon.
Yes.
That's where you grew up, I believe.
Yes.
In the Cameroon. Inou, what role does radio play in the Cameroon?
Yeah, before answering the question, I will try to speak about the country. The country has a past that has been a colonized past from Germany from 1848 until 1916. And then when Germany lost the First World War, England and Great Britain took over Cameroon. And then we grew up in a so-called British-French media system. Cameroon is a country where the two main colonial languages are French and English. And we have our own languages, we have almost 200 different languages in Cameroon. And then one part of Cameroon is the English-speaking Cameroon, and the other part is the French-speaking Cameroon. Then, in those both parts of the country, we had two types of making media. The British or the colonial rule from Great Britain, they focused on the British part and BBC English, VOA, and so on, where the one taking how do you call it? Building up a new generation of journalists from the English part of the country, and the French part from France, École de journalisme de Lille, was the second part of the way media and communication works in our country. But the two systems came together on May 20th, 1972, and made a kind of reunification. Yeah, the English and the French system decided to come together and make a reunification, and these were the birth date of the Republic of Cameroon.
The Republic of Cameroon.
Yes.
So back now to radio.
Yes.
What role does radio play in this form in the Cameroon?
Yes. I'm coming to the question. As soon as those entities, the English part and the French part, came together, they decided to create a university of media. And the University of Media, we call it ESTIC, the Journalism School of Yaoundé, the capital city. They had the obligation to recruit English-speaking and French-speaking people for the Cameroon radio and television. But at the same time, we had the impression that the English-speaking people, because they were a minority, were not really represented. And that's where I can start answering your question now about radio and the process of making radio in Cameroon. What the radio play in Cameroon, radio is the most heard media in African countries. Radio. This is the thing. I grew up listening to radio. Radio was and is until today my hobby, and many millions of Africans and Cameroonians play a great role in listen to radios. And the radio is a kind of strategic media in our countries. And because of that, because of the way that a lot of how do you call it, communique, a lot of press releases go through radio. Radio is the main way for the state, for the private to communicate with people. And at the same time, as you know, the African cultures are also a true oral cultural tradition, has a true oral cultural tradition. And radio is the main mean to communicate ideas, to communicate culture, to communicate music. And at the same time, radio plays a very, very great role in the liberation of the African countries and of Cameroon when it comes, for instance, for the democratization process, for instance. Or, as I grew up every morning in Douala, where I grew up in Cameroon, the largest city of Cameroon, we had a kind of happy birthday wishes every morning on radio. Now, many people from the city write to the national, to the Cameroon radio and television radio, and they read the thing on air. And at the same time, even until today, the result, the public result of how do you call it, Matura.
Yes.
Matura is over the air.
Really?
Yes. The journalists read the entire name of the million people who have succeeded to the exams over the air.
So radio in Cameroon is really community radio in its real sense, isn't it?
We have in Cameroon, the system is that we have in Cameroon the main broadcast office is the Cameroon Radio and Television. And they have offices in the entire country. We have 10 regions in Cameroon. But at the same time, since the middle of the 1990s, yes, since the middle 1995, 1996, the churches, the Roman Catholic churches started with the so-called community media. And they created their own radio. And with the own radio, not only they were somehow interested in speaking about God on radio, because they will reach a much wider target. But at the same time, they use the mean also to build up or to educate a new generation of journalists that can make some radio programs and so on. It means the community radio in Cameroon has started with the churches in the middle of the 19th.
You're talking about church radio, state radio. Which is the most popular radio station in the Cameroon?
The most popular radio station in Cameroon is a private radio station. What's the name again? I really don't have the name. I don't have the name on now. But it's a private radio station. And this private radio station is popular because they speak a lot about political issues, and they are not frightened about the language they use. But at the same time, Cameroon is a country where you don't really need a kind of license. You have the right to make your own radio, but at the same time, the government can come and shut down if you are not respecting what they want you to respect. It means that's the deal we have in Cameroon. Yeah.
So it's an unwritten rule. Everybody respects and everybody carries on. On this private radio station, what feelings does this radio station transmit? How do people hear it? Is it happy? Is it? Tell us a bit about this.
Yeah, you have in Cameroon. I grew up with the so-called radio, a possibility to have this kind of shortwave radio and FM radio and so on, because we were also linked a lot to the radio station outside the country, because inside the country it is not a kind of democracy. So it's a kind of dictatorship behind some democratic means. Yeah, we have a parliament, but we know that the political party on power is a dictatorship, because the one on power now, Mr. Biya, is there since 1982, 40 years on power. It means many radio stations in Cameroon are subjected to respect what the state say and what the state does. At the same time, in order to bring another new stuff inside the public speech, the public discourses, they have to sometime to quit the path and then to create their own way of making information or entertainment. I think let us speak much more about entertainment, and is also one of the greatest part of radio content in our country. Many speaking about playing a lot of music, making content that are not really political, because politics and it's not so easy, and at the same time making a lot of sports, gossip. This is also a part of Cameroon radio content, and at the same time, what was the question again?
What feeling do people get when they listen to the radio? Does it make them happy, or does it cheer them up?
When they listen to music, to gossip, and sometimes to politics, and they have the impression they are in, but a lot of people in Cameroon, when they listen to radio, they are truly happy. They are truly happy, and because also the radio is the one of the media that really speaks to the heart of people, and somehow I will say that we will need in Cameroon much more content radio, where we can speak much more about politics, and even if we play music, we should somehow also play music that is coined with politics.
So you mean you need more talk radio, more?
There are talk radios. There are talk radio, but those talk radios are they have also, how do you call it, some games, on-air games where you can earn some money and so on. But those talks are normally not political talks. They are society, they are gossip, but they have also the so-called way to speak to people in need, to help people. I think this is the thing. Radio is also a great means in Cameroon to help a lot of others that are in need.
So it's very, very popular, you said. Cameroon radio is very popular. Is it more popular than television? Could you tell us a bit about this?
I think television is also... Both are really popular, because television comes with pictures. Television comes with moving pictures. And a lot of people in Cameroon, they have their own television set at home. And at the same time, the television set in Cameroon is not really linked to Cameroonian culture, because Canal Plus is the French organization, the French enterprise or the French company leading in Cameroon when it comes to television. And they have a lot of overseas programs that somehow alienate also the people. And we are used even to be focused on what is happening in Paris or in New York or in London than what is happening at home. And this is where I can say that radio is somehow a better mean, because we have much more on the level of radio. We have much more Cameroonian content, and people listen to those Cameroonian content than when we speak about television. Of course, we have I think is it 7 or 6 television channels, but it's not like popular like as radio stations.
You said at the beginning the people in the Cameroon are very oral. They listen more than they visualize. So maybe that's why radio's so popular.
Somehow, yes, somehow, because I am in a generation of people. I grew up without television. Television is a new media in Cameroon. But now, when you observe at the media level, now social media are taking the, how do you say it in English?
Taking the lead.
Taking the lead, because there are much more people on those Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, but radio is still the greater mean to communicate in Cameroon.
You mentioned everybody can put up a radio station. You must stick to the rules. The Roman Catholic Church is busy on its radio station. You have the state radio. Could this mean that the Cameroon radio is one of the most developed, most competitive in the world, maybe?
The most competitive in the world, I don't really know, because I need the statistics. But but I think that we have a lot of radios in Cameroon. Even Radio Orange, I think 5 or 6 years ago, we had a cooperation with a radio from an Anglophone part of the country, because one radio maker from Radio Orange was making a kind of internship in Cameroon. There are a lot of radio stations in Cameroon, and there are a lot of people interested in making radio. And as I told you before, I have a friend of mine who has a radio station in his remote village, and he told me each person with each technical mean can start a radio, but you have to know that if you speak against the government, they are going to shut the radio down. And that, I think, one of the reasons why people are also interested to make radio, because they don't want to go into politics. But it is a very, very big business in our country, yes.
Very, very big business.
Yeah.
And big business in radio makes big personalities. Are there any or tell us about the big radio personalities in the Cameroon?
The big radio personalities, I grew up with a journalist called Jean-Claude Autou. Jean-Claude Autou was working for the Radio Cameroon. That is today the Cameroon Radio and Television. And he was one of the brilliant journalists there. We have, and I love him so much because he was a guy speaking fluently in French and telling stories about what is happening in the city and so on. And the second personality for me should be a sport journalist called Abel Mbenge, who is now back home after working at the Confederation of African Football in Cairo. And he was also one of the greatest guys who helped us young people thinking about sport journalism and how we should do that. And there was a third person called Maurice Chimeni, I don't really know, working for Radio Douala. And those are personalities that are, for me, the most important ones today. The new personalities, I don't really know them because I live in Austria now and I have little idea about it. Yeah,
little contact.
Yeah.
But radio does play a very, very, very big role in the Cameroon. Is this role bigger than radio in Europe? How can you compare? Is there a comparable radio in Europe, or is it completely different?
I think radio in Cameroon, or journalists working in Cameroon radio, are much more free than journalists working in European radios, because in Europe there are topics that are somehow taboo in Europe. When we speak about Palestine and Israel in Europe, each journalist here will somehow prefer to avoid the topic, but in Cameroon they don't avoid the topic. They really don't avoid the topic, and they give voices to Palestinians. They give voices to Israelis, and it is really hot when we discuss about those topics. And I think that's one of the most important difference between radio, making radio or making journalism in African countries and making journalism in Europe. That there are topics that are taboo in Europe, and there are topics that are not. Those topics are not taboo in African countries or in Cameroon.
So this is very, very interesting. Of course, the listeners are very, very important. Do you have cooperation between listeners and radio? Do they have phone-in shows? Do they have this kind of thing?
I think this is the word I was looking before. Yeah, phone-in shows, yes, and phone-in shows where people can even earn money, because we have some contests. There are companies that sponsor radio programs, for instance. Say, okay, yes, today we are going to play 2 hours, and then people can listen, can phone, and give some answers and nod and so on, and then they can earn somehow. It can be money. It can be tickets for many shows in the city or festivals. So something like this, yes.
Is Cameroon radio round the clock, 24 hours? Because for round the clock radio, you need very, very many people to do this. You need radio presenters.
Good question.
Are there enough people, young people, wanting to get into radio in Cameroon?
In Cameroon, there are enough young people who want to get into radio. But the thing is that they don't work, let's say, 24 hours a day. Radio station in Cameroon they started at 5 until 11 or 11:30, and then from 12 until 6 they have music show. And then from 6 or from 5 they started again with the voices and with journalists in studio and so on. Because you can't really afford that. It is not. Cameroon is not a country where you will find where the economy is so huge that you can afford to make 24 hours a day radio.
So it's more a daytime thing.
It's daytime, yeah. Yes, roughly. Between 5 and 11:30 or 12. Yes.
Okay, so you've got the whole night with music, and then the action begins again in the morning.
Yes. Like and as you know, Cameroon is near the equator. Okay. And means daylight and nightlight is the same. 6 hours is 12. Yeah, from 6 to 6 is 12 hours.
Yes.
Yeah, you have day, and then from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. it's night. And somehow we adapt to that natural way of viewing things.
And what do people do in the night when they're not listening to the radio? Are they dancing, having fun?
Yeah, they are having fun. Some are working because also you have huge. You have many private private companies they're working, and they have also fun because it's like you are working from let's say from 8 until 7 from 8 until 5 p.m. and then afterwards you need to rest, and when you rest you listen to radio. Some radio play music, some radio continue discussions, some radio make phone calls and so on. But at the end, people, if even in their cars, they listen to radios. It's a normal mean of living in Cameroon.
So Cameroon radio is a Cameroon way of life. That's very interesting.
Yes.
Last question, Inou. What can we in Europe learn from radio in Cameroon? Is there something we can actually learn?
Yeah,
Tell us about this.
I think what we can learn from Cameroon radios is the way that a lot of Cameroonian radios don't have new equipment. It is extremely important to the so-called, what we call in German, Nachhaltigkeit. They don't throw away things. When a microphone is kaput, they try to repair this microphone because they don't have the financial means to buy a new microphone. It's a kind of repairing society.
Repairing society?
Yes.
What can we learn in the way of programs, in the way of content?
In the way of program, and I think it is extremely important for democracy like the Austrian democracy to open the microphone to, when we speak about democracy, to open the microphone to all visions in a society, to make it diverse. Not like now when we speak about Russia and Ukraine or Israel and Palestine, there are some who are not invited to speak. This is not democracy. Yeah, and when African countries like Cameroonian countries say, okay, we have adopted democracy in the 90s, it means that we gave the possibility to all opinion to express themselves. And then we let the people decide what to believe or not. This is the thing.
So what you're saying is the Cameroon radio gives a bigger freedom to the people so they can make their own impressions, because you have a much wider way of expressing things in the Cameroon than you do here.
Yes.
So this is one thing we must think about here. We've reached the end, but before we finally go, is there one thing very important you want to add that we might have forgotten or you think is important?
I think for me, thank you so much for inviting me to speak about this topic. This is the first time I speak about this topic in Austrian media. And I think that the topic of radio or listening radios in Cameroon or in African countries shows also that it is extremely important to listen to radios, because radio is also an educative mean in our country. And we had it during the COVID time. During the COVID time, radio in Cameroon and in other parts of African countries were really as an educative mean. And it's also because it is cheaper than television. It is cheaper than social media, because to have social media, you need a smartphone that is not cheap. And radio is the best way to reach much more many millions of Africans that are not in the cities. And the last thing I would like to add is to ask many institutions, radio institutions in Europe, to help their colleague on African field, because they don't have the same mean we have here. And I think this program perhaps should help us giving another perspective of the work those people, the wonderful work those people are doing on the field.
a wonderful perspective. Inou, a great way to finish. Inou from Cameroon, thank you very, very much for talking to us this morning.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thanks.